Hi, everyone. So welcome to Live. I'm Ann Hine, Embroidery Software Specialist for Janome America. And today we're talking about buttonholes in the embroidery machine. So we do have some in our CM17 that are built in, and then we have some in our Artistic Digitizer software. Now, the ones in the software are great because you can use the features in the software to align things. If you're doing, down a front of a shirt or a dress, and you want to put them exactly spaced apart, you could do other creative things with them. And I'll be showing you that. I'm going to give you a quick little glimpse here of some fancy buttonholes there that we're going to work on, and talk about that a little bit. It's very easy in the software. Maybe you've seen them over there in the properties menu, under outline. You might have seen them there, but today we're going to play with them just a little bit. So let me put my camera on, and I'm going to show you a few things first, and then we'll come back to the software and we'll play a little bit in there so you can see exactly how they work. All right, so let me get that on here. There we go. All right, so these are the ones I was talking about. Now you can make your buttonholes any size you want. These are, I think this is a 1-inch gap in here. You can set the how big the slit is. I've added little decorative stitches around the outside to show you can make them decorative, or you can just make them plain, like in the center here, these plain one, and then I have a decorative stitch out there. Now some of these, I've been stitching these out. This is my first sample of them, and I did put a decorative stitch here, but one of the things I might do, these stitches need to be a little bit bigger, and I'm going to try using a thinner thread, maybe a 60 weight thread. Might be a lot better on that part of it. And then I just use a matching thread in the bobbin as well. So, and this was my problem child right here. I had a bad wound bobbin, so I had a little issue right there, but I do like the little bit of that part around it, and I love this part. So that's some of the things that you can do. And then you can do things like this. You can take your plain buttonhole, and I'll bring this up closer, and you can add a flower decorative part to it. So there's my buttonhole under there, and I created my little half flower, and I applied the buttonhole on top of there, removed overlaps, and stitched this out. This is actually in another video I did, I think in 2021 or 2022. So I did another one on buttonholes there. There's also, I just did this a week ago. These are my button covers, and I used a buttonhole in the center here so that I could open this up and put it on my jacket where the buttons are. So it would go over these, kind of like a button cover, but it doesn't cover your button. So you can also have them on, and I don't have this one open, and this is bigger than what's here. You can put this on so that it'll sit behind it. Oh, oops. You can put it here so that you can have it behind this while you have that jacket up. And I don't think I have, maybe I have that jacket available. Here we go. So here I have them just set on the button. So if I had my coat open, and this one is actually buttoned in there. Okay. And I did these last week, no, 2 weeks ago. So you can see that video there. It was on a few of my favorite things in the software. That's what I was working on in there. So working with, this is gradient. That's what I like. And using the array tool and buttonholes. All right. So let me go back to the software and we'll get started through there. Let me see. I'll put the camera back here. All right. So what I love is, I can align those buttonholes. I can make a tack down in there, a placement place. So if I lay my shirt in my hoop, I know where to put it, where those buttonholes are going to go, and set it up just like that. Or I could just do really decorative things with buttonholes, like scatter. I have a couple of ideas of things I want to do with buttonholes, just kind of like scatter them around. You can make your buttonholes and you can run ribbon through them, right? That would be really cool at the bottom of a pant leg, maybe on a cuff, things like that. So you have other options that you can do with them, and you can make single ones, or you can make a whole group of them and keep them in line or whatever. And then you can also break them apart or ungroup them and then move them around at will, however you want to do that. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with them. All right, so let me go, I'll get the software started here. Hang on one second while I get this up. There we go. Have to get mine activated there, and then I can open it. And where is it located on here today? Now my little icon sometimes is, hang on one second while I go get it. There we go. All right, now it'll open. With any luck, we'll get it to open. Come on. And let me go to software. Hang on. You know, some days things are just not easy. Here, let's try that one more time. Hang on, let me minimize that because it's getting in the way of this. There we go. Software. Now I can open it. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that little delay there. All right, so I will close this out of the way. Here we go. So when you want to work with your buttonholes, what you need to do is you can go into Create New, and then you're going to use your digitized outline shape, and you're going to draw a line for your buttonholes. So if I did a line from here to here, I could put multi ones on there. And so I'm left clicking, right click, and shape to get that in there. Or I could go across. If I wanted them to go across, I could do that too. I could put one here, left click, right click, and shape like that. I could do both of those. So I'm going to start with this one up here first. So in my properties over here, you can see right here is the buttonhole tab. So I'm going to choose it, and it sets the buttonholes on my line, and then I can choose the different top, a different middle, and a different end to it. All right, so let's look at the line first. So this is just the basic one. I've done nothing to it, so that's what it looks like. And then I can come over here and I'm going to add a rounded top and a rounded bottom, so you can see that. So there they are. They're all in a line. Maybe I don't need that many, but I'm still working with playing with this. So I'm going to come in here and the spacing. So maybe I need my buttonholes spaced apart, maybe 1.5 inches. So I'm going to put 1.5 in there. There we go. And then you can see they space themselves out, and it deleted a few of them because my line was only this long. Okay, so there we go with that. So that's that. Let me select them again. I'm actually going to make them a different color than what we have up here already. And then, so I worked with the spacing. I could rotate them if I don't want them going up and down. If I wanted to rotate them 90 degrees, I could set them all at 90. Let's just go back to this. We'll keep them at this for just a moment. And then this is the length of the opening. So maybe I'm using a 1-inch button, so I want to put 1.0 in there. And that will open up this area in here. Now I should be able to measure. Let's see when I measure that. There we go. About 1 inch in there. Now, one thing I would do is make yourself some sample buttonholes, like a 1 inch, a 3/4 inch, and so forth, so that you can see and then test it out, stitch it out on some fabric with your stabilizer inside, or interfacing, 2 pieces of fabric with interfacing. That's how you would do a buttonhole on your clothing. And then see if your button is going to fit through there. And normally you would do that when you're testing a buttonhole. We have the buttonhole foot, and you put your button on the back of it, and that determines the size of your buttonhole. So here you have to do a bit of measuring, or it says on your buttons when you buy them what the size are. So once you get it like this, you're all set. Okay, so maybe you need 4 or 5 of them. So what I would do from here, let's say these are going to be down the front of a shirt. I'm just going to move them to the side here for a minute like that. So next I would have to do is make a placement place for my shirt to align, so I know where to put my shirt. And I could draw, I could create a straight line down here with my outline shape tool, just like this. There we go. So I know I would stitch this first. I'll show you in properties how we change it. It's going to be stitched on the stabilizer. Okay. So you would have, you could have a wash away stabilizer in your hoop, and then your shirt itself is going to have the interfacing between the two pieces of your button placket. So you have that extra strength in there. So you would align, this would stitch, and you would align your shirt up to that. And if you wanted to tack this down, you could create yourself a little tack down box using our shapes and rectangle. And I'm just going to create a little box here like this. And then I'm going to delete the fill on this because we don't need the fill. And I'm going to make the running line, I'm going to make down here the length of it to be 5.0 mm. So it's a long stitch on there. So what I would be doing is I'm going to click off of here. Let me make sure that's 5. There we go. So what I would do is this line would stitch first. I would lay my shirt down, then this box would tack down my shirt, and then my buttons would align in there just like that. And I would probably have measured, I could make a template if I wanted to, but I probably would have measured my shirt of where I want to start my buttonholes so that everything would fit together. Now, over here in my properties, let me change auto and we can look over here with what's going on. Let me change the little box here to a different color. That's always handy. We're going to make it this purple color. There we go. And then I have a line down here. I'm going to make this a different color as well. I'll make it bright pink. There we go. Okay. So this pink one, I'm just going to put it at the bottom. We're going to ignore it's there for now. So the first thing I want to stitch is the placement line. So I'm going to left click and drag up. Then I want to tack down my shirt. So I'm going to go here and press up, and then it will stitch my buttonholes right there. Okay. And you could create this box here, the space that you want your buttonholes to be in, and then you could work with the spacing of your buttonholes with the parameters in your properties to make sure you have buttons that fit all the way through in here. Okay. On that part of it. And so if I stretch this up, it will give me another buttonhole if I stretch it up. And then I could pull this down. It's what it's not going to do. Let's move this. There it goes. It's going to still keep it that space apart. Like when I'm here and I stretch this, it's not going to create that next buttonhole until I'm 1 inch away. So as I go up here, it'll appear. There it is. And so they're still all the same. This one here, let me undo so I get back inside here. There we go. Now, if I wanted them all sideways, I could just come over here again and just say 90. There we are. Now, these are all a group. They're all together. They're going to stay that way unless I do separate to objects. When I separate them to objects, now they're still together. I just have to ungroup them. Now they're all individual. So if I moved one or something, they're all not going to move. Only one of them will move at a time. And when you start doing the decorating part of it, that's when you want to separate to objects and ungroup them so you can work with individual ones. Unless you're just going to put the same, maybe you're going to put the same design on each one of these. That would, you would have that at your option as well. Okay, so let me just, and this doesn't stitch, this line in here. This is not a stitch line. In fact, when you can see down here, it doesn't have stitches, and you can see here, it doesn't have stitches. It's just artwork. So it doesn't have anything to affect. It's just the center point of your buttonholes on there that you're working with. So let me show you how I decorated these buttonholes. Let me pull this back. I'm going to just take a couple of these, and I'm going to copy them and paste, and I'll just move them to the side like that. There we go. And then ungroup them. Now, if I wanted to make these longer, of course, I can make them longer and they get a little wider as well. So I have that option. When I'm working here, that's where when I'm putting them over here, this is where I would set this inside slit. This is changing the whole buttonhole itself. Okay. So once I have that selected, what I did is I went up to convert auto border and I played with different distances to the outside. So let me see if I went to 0.2. No, I'm going to do 0.02. I want it to remove holes so it doesn't go on the inside running, and okay. And then you can see, let's make that just a different color for right now. We'll make it this light purple. You can see it's very much on the very edge of it, which might be a perfect. That was 0.02. So what I would do is have it selected. I could go to properties, and now I could open up my stitches, and I could pick a stitch that I would want to be on the outside of that. So let me see here. Maybe I want something like that. Now that falls right on top of my button hole, so I could come over here to mirror stitches and see if we could move it by collecting both. It puts it to the outside just a little bit. Now I might want it a bit more to the outside, and I could work with my offset and play with the offset numbers here to get it in the distance I want. So I don't have to keep going back to the auto border and changing the border. So I could have it far apart. I could bring it in closer, however I want. But I would work with the offset because it keeps it equal distant around there. You could try proportional and just make it maybe 98 smaller and just bring it in like that if you want. Let's try 95. And it starts bringing it in closer as well. But it's changing the whole size of it too on that part of it. And of course, you have that option when you're playing with it over here. You might want to change the width. Maybe I want this to be 4 millimeter. So I'm going to put 4.0 mm and hit that. And it made them a little bit bigger. I could make the length of them further apart so they're stretched out. Maybe they need to be 7.0 millimeter when I stretch them out. There we go. So you can play with the parameters of your stitch as well to get those, those things that you want. And then when you go to stitch that, if you're going to stitch them all the same color, you can put them in the order that you'd like them to stitch. Buttonholes first, then the outer parts, and so forth. So you have them all in there. Let me go to a new page so we don't have that confusing us. If you wanted to do, just one buttonhole, you can put a little line here like that. Left click, right click, and shape. Select it, and then go over here to buttonhole. There's your buttonhole. Now this one is a little crooked, and one of the things when you're working with your buttonholes, sometimes it's good to turn on, either use your grid lines or turn on snap. So I'm actually going to select this one and delete it, and I'm going to create another one by using the line here. So I'm going to left click, right click, and shape. Then I'm going to go to buttonholes. Now it gave me two, but I only want one. So I'm going to come in here. Whoops, let me escape out of the line. There we go. And I went to select, and see you have your sizing box here. I'm going to select the arrow in the center, and I'm going to slide that back. They're overlapped right now. I just want one of them, so they'll make one of them. Still a little overlapped. Let's see if we can make that smaller. When these lines go away, you've got your individual one. There we go. And I still am a little crooked. My line was drawn crooked. So in this case, I would definitely like to go up and do my view, grid, show. Click here so it knows it's activating. And then view, grid, snap. So now when I draw that line and I go from here to here, it snaps right on there, end shape. Select it, buttonhole. There we go. And then I could just change the inside of this. Let me click off of this so you can see. These are essentially two buttonholes right here, right now. So let me select it and slide this up. So I get to my one buttonhole. And then when I have it selected, I can change in here what my spacing is. Maybe I want this to be 1.5 in the center. There it is. So I've got an 1.5 inch buttonhole right there. And I still have to add the starting. I could do a keyhole and maybe just a regular bottom like that. And there's my buttonhole, which is nice. You can make really big buttonholes, which is kind of fun. And but I love the creativity of it, that you can add things to your buttonholes. They don't have to be all the same size. So let me go back to the camera for just a moment. Here we go. There we are. All right, so that sort of explains our buttonholes. They're pretty simple to use. And if you're just doing them straight buttonholes, that's great. But I love, me, I always have to add a little bit more creativity. Could you imagine if you did them, on the edge of like a t-shirt here, you could have different buttonholes. You could put a ribbon through them, or you could just have little decorative stitches around them. They'd kind of make a nice little extra thing on the sleeve of you'd want to open your sleeve if you were going to do it like on the sleeve of a t-shirt or something like that. You'd have to do that. So I'm going to challenge you guys to go ahead and play with those buttonholes. They're one of those things that we don't, they're over there. We don't really see them. We don't really, know what they do or how they work. But, you can always go up to your help file and then go to topics and search. And then you can write in buttonholes, and it'll explain those buttonholes there to you a little bit more if you've forgotten how to use them. You can also do a search on our Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook page for hashtag buttonholes, and anything I've done in the past on buttonholes will come up. So they're always a handy thing to add in for, a little decorative feature. I'm even thinking, you could make one and put it in an array and make a buttonhole flower. Would be kind of fun, right? All right, everyone, that's it for buttonholes today. Get out there, get your software open, and play with those buttonholes. Post them to the Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook page so we can see what you're working on. We love seeing what you work on, and we'll see you again another time. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.